Largo is the CEO of a multinational corporation with hundreds of subsidiaries spanning the globe, hailed as a multi-technology genius. However, one fateful day, he witnesses his only son being kidnapped right before his eyes. How will the rescue journey of a wealthy tycoon unfold? The story begins when Largo and his son Noam visit a remote village, the hometown of his deceased wife, and where she rests eternally. Despite loving his son, the relationship between the two is not smooth. They have conflicts that everyone believes they are right about. Largo wants to convince his son to listen to him by holding a knife and teaching him a lesson, that the knife can be dangerous, but if used properly, it will become a useful tool. However, Noam does not accept it. To him, all his father's theories are meaningless. He cannot find a common language and leaves first. But he had not gone far when Largo suddenly heard a desperate cry for help. He immediately rushed out and found Noam being kidnapped by a group of masked men. Largo rushed to save his son, but they fired a series of shots to stop him. It was the bullet of the assassin who had been secretly following the two father and son when they stood in front of the wife's grave. Seeing that he could not risk rushing out when his son had been taken into the car, Largo immediately changed direction regardless of the dangerous cliff, and knocked down the driver and immediately rushed down to seize the motorcycle to chase them. The kidnappers saw this and immediately opened fire to stop him. Seeing this, Largo quickly ducked down to let the car act as a shield. Taking advantage of their distraction, Noam kicked one of them off the car. Seeing the opportunity, Largo used all his strength to jump onto the car, then directly confronted the kidnappers of his son. The two wrestled fiercely in the car, and he almost got kicked off the road. But with reflexes, Largo managed to cling to the tail of the car and climbed up. Just as he emerged, he saw Noam being beaten by the driver. Largo angrily rushed forward and wrestled fiercely to grab the gun. He controlled the muzzle and finished him off with a fatal shot. But the car had lost control, causing the two father and son to crash straight into the raging water. The whole thing happened before the eyes of the mysterious assassin who was always watching them. Largo emerged from the water frantically searching for Noam, but in vain. The only thing he found was his son's necklace. 3 weeks later, he was still along the riverbank searching for his son. There were times when he was exhausted. He saw an illusion of Noam standing under the water looking at him. But when he woke up, there was no one around him. There were times when Largo wanted to give up, believing that his son was no longer alive. But as long as he had not found his son's body, he could not give up. Returning to Thailand, where the group's headquarters is located, Largo ordered the establishment of a separate search system, connecting all data just to serve the sole purpose of finding his son again. This hunt will never stop unless he orders it himself. Simultaneously with the search for his son, Largo launched a model of aircraft powered entirely by clean energy, something Noam had always wanted. But even though it was a step forward for the environment, in the eyes of many people, he was still a ruthless CEO. His genius inventions caused thousands of people to lose their jobs, pushing them into debt, also for that reason. As soon as the new product was launched, the company's system was immediately attacked by hackers. On the screen, the face of the director of a Largo subsidiary, Dennis, appeared. He condemned him and blamed him for causing hundreds of his employees to fall into ruin. Before Largo could react, Dennis suddenly pulled out a gun and pointed it straight at his throat and committed suicide. It all happened too quickly for Largo to react. Just as he stepped out of the room, his phone suddenly rang. The number displayed was Noam's. But he only had time to hear a disjointed sentence from his son before the line was snatched away. The other end of the line rang out the voice of a stranger. He was the one who had been watching the two father and son from the beginning. It turned out that he was the one sitting next to Dennis, forcing him to accuse him and end his life. Before a series of Largo's questions, he only responded with vague and suggestive words. But just knowing Noam was still alive, he had enough reason to continue fighting. Without letting emotions dominate, Largo immediately convened a meeting with the directors of the subsidiaries. He realized that his company was facing a series of serious problems. Outside, the wave of protests from people against the group had not yet shown signs of abating. While the troubles kept coming, Largo gradually realized that someone was behind manipulating everything. This person not only wanted to destroy his career, but was also related to Noam's kidnapping. To find answers, he decided to follow the first clue was Dennis, the man who had just committed suicide in front of him. He immediately flew to his house and pressed the bell. Because no one opened, he had to climb over the window and break in. Traces of blood were still on the floor, but the house was completely deserted. Largo opened the computer on the desk and found a medical record. Dennis was suffering from end-stage lung cancer. At first, he thought that was the reason he committed suicide. Suddenly, a gun from behind pointed at him. The person holding the gun was Dennis's wife named Helen. Her eyes were full of hatred. She affirmed that her husband did not die from illness. but because he wanted to oppose Largo to save the employees who had lost their jobs. Helen believed that he was the one who destroyed everything. Understanding that Helen was being dominated by emotions, Largo remained calm and did not take any drastic actions. He softly explained that he came here to save Dennis's company. Moreover, the person who is truly responsible for everything is still hiding in the dark. Hearing this, Helen began to waver. The resentment in her eyes gradually subsided, and the real conversation began. Helen admitted that she did not understand her husband's business, but remembered that recently he had a transaction with a Chinese company, which bought a large amount of copper from Dennis's company. The only name she remembered was Largo, but she did not know the specifics. When Helen was about to say something more, a stranger attacked her from behind. Largo immediately reacted, but he fired a surge of electricity that paralyzed his whole body. The attacker was none other than the assassin who had been following him from the beginning. He slowly came forward to pick up Largo's knife. Before his eyes, he coldly stabbed it straight into Helen's heart. Largo wanted to rush to stop it, but his muscles were all stiff. He was completely helpless to witness the tragedy happen right before his eyes. Not long after, Largo woke up in the worst situation, which was being arrested by the police on charges of murdering Dennis's wife. The evidence from the scene was all against him. Even if he had 100 words of defense, he could not dispel suspicion. The media rushed in. Largo's name quickly flooded the newspapers with sensational headlines. Meanwhile, in a hidden corner, the assassin silently watched everything. His eyes were full of satisfaction. He did not need to do much, but everything went according to plan. Including a female streamer specializing in hot news, she tried to approach him to get views, but was so aggressive that she rushed straight into the prison. As a result, she was confiscated her phone by the police and thrown into the cell right next to Largo. But as soon as the police left, she pulled out another phone. Largo saw it and immediately wanted to borrow it to contact his subordinates. But when he just approached her, she started live streaming. Taking advantage of the moment, she stood near Largo, quickly snatched the phone. He immediately called Cochrane, his most trusted subordinate director, but even though he made many consecutive calls, the other end did not answer. He did not know that while he was in trouble, the directors under his command had gathered to take advantage of the situation to overthrow him. An emergency shareholders meeting took place. They activated the secret code 5-1, a voting process to remove the incumbent CEO. To them, Largo was no longer a reliable leader. The company was being surrounded by protests, stock plummeted, media surrounded. If they continued to let Largo remain in office, the entire group could collapse. Cochrane, who was once loyal, now became the leader in the overthrow campaign. He was ready to push the person who was once his leader down the abyss. Largo, after not being able to call anyone, he accepted defeat and decided to do it his own way. At this time, the girl Bonnie still kept persuading him to return the phone. In the conversation, he learned that she was just an orphan girl about the age of his son. Hearing what she said, he involuntarily felt pity. A moment later, the guard came to check. Seeing Bonnie constantly cursing at him, he stepped into the cell, intending to assault her. But Largo did not let that happen. He used the phone to threaten that if he continued his hooligan behavior, he would turn on the live stream. As soon as he got close, he immediately grabbed his hand and used all his strength to beat him unconscious. Thanks to this, they both got the key and escaped. But outside, everyone gathered too crowded. They could not risk running forward. Bonnie quickly used a knife to puncture the tires of a series of police cars to create chaos. Then the two tried to steal a car to escape, but the current situation did not favor them. After a while of thinking, Largo found a truck carrying snowboards. He intended to borrow it, but accidentally made a loud noise, so the two were discovered before they could act. They were forced to move as quickly as possible. The assassin standing outside watching also realized that the target had escaped. He immediately chased after them. At this time, the two had jumped onto the snowmobile and rushed straight into the forest at breakneck speed. Bonnie did not forget to pull out her phone to live stream, attracting thousands of views and shares. The assassin used an all-terrain vehicle, so quickly shortened the distance. Largo tried to use the gun he got from the police to shoot at him, but unexpectedly, he did not hit a single bullet. While the two did not know how to shake off, the front appeared another car. The two quickly lay down, successfully glided through the bottom of the car. But the assassin was still chasing them behind. Largo immediately jumped off the snowmobile and hid to one side, just waiting for him to come near to rush out to attack. He thought that he was the source of all the trouble. While teaching him a lesson, he told Bonnie to quit live stream to force him to confess. Before millions of viewers, he did not hesitate to admit killing Helen's wife and husband, so Largo was acquitted. Then he continued to hit him a life of death, until he was about to make him confess where his son was. Bonnie suddenly rushed to kick him hard and fell down the hillside. This made Largo extremely angry, but Bonnie said that she saw him intending to do something bad to him, so just wanted to help. Knowing that he could not blame her, he could only accept the truth. Largo and Bonnie, after settling on his private plane, he immediately called his secretary Riva to report the situation. Through this conversation, he also learned that the members of the subsidiary company were plotting to eliminate him. Riva warned that he should not trust his subordinates too much, because people's hearts are not as good as he thought. Hearing that, Largo felt a bit sad. He did not expect that over the years he had brought countless benefits to them, but just recently encountered disaster. Not long they were ready to turn their backs to kick him out of the game. As for the assassin, after escaping death, he just returned and saw news about the battle between him and Largo. During the fight, he accidentally admitted that he killed Helen's wife and husband, but unexpectedly that confession was live-streamed to hundreds of thousands of viewers. Although very angry, but he could not do anything else. At this time, he still had to hide in the dark, waiting for the right opportunity. Largo continued to try to contact Cochran's, but he refused to answer the phone. He even ordered Riva to draft a notice of dismissal from the CEO position. Before the blatant betrayal, Riva did not hesitate to throw the notice down and left. Not being able to contact Cochran's, so Largo decided to return to the hometown of his deceased wife. At this time, he did not know where to go, so this was the only place to return. Bonnie was also taken along with him. She was very surprised to see a dollar billionaire like him choose this remote, poor place to rest. But when she arrived, she realized that this was the resting place of his wife. Out of curiosity, that Bonnie came to that grave. Just then, Largo also came to visit his wife. Seeing Bonnie wearing his son's shirt, he was quite angry, but she explained that her clothes were all wet, so just were temporarily. Largo was too excited that the severe headache came again. Fortunately, Bonnie learned how to take care of herself from a young age because she was orphaned, so she knew how to help him calm down. When the two were talking, Bonnie used her phone to check the news. They found that the company had officially voted to dismiss Largo. This news was like a fatal blow. Feeling turned away by the whole world, how much effort poured into the river. At this time, he truly felt the two words of people's hearts. As for Cochran's, who had the second largest stake after Largo, he was also the one who decided to fire him and thought he had won big. But when he was talking to his subordinates, suddenly this person was shot down on the spot. From the darkness, the assassin appeared. He came forward to force Cochran's to write a suicide note. When Cochran's realized that after the letter ended, his life would also end, he repeatedly refused. But at that moment, the assassin gave evidence of his daughter. She was in his hands. If he did not continue writing, she would die. Follow his words, she would be spared. Realizing that he had no other choice, Cochran's had to agree to write the last words of his life. All the crimes in the letter were blamed on Largo, that he had pushed him to the end. After completing, the assassin had fabricated the scene, so when the police came, they believed that Cochran's had committed suicide. At this time, in the village where Largo and Bonnie were staying, a bounty hunter suddenly appeared. He put a knife to his neck, but before he could do anything, Riva appeared behind and shot him with an electric gun. So they easily controlled and captured the bounty hunter. After half a day, he finally confessed the truth. It turned out that he followed Largo's trail thanks to secretly following Riva, but she did not know that. Bonnie did not have a good feeling with Riva. She thought that this woman was not trustworthy. But with Largo, Riva was the only person he could trust. According to information from Riva, she had investigated the Chinese company Largo. This was a company owned by Chao Chun, a Chinese businessman related to the criminal world. He owned a coal mine and was backed by a Myanmar military company. Knowing this, the three immediately set off for Chao Chun's headquarters. On the way, they read news about Cochran's death. His suicide note had spread everywhere. It created a wave of resentment, with Largo unprecedented. He did not understand why this person targeted him. What was his purpose after all? Why was he so determined to destroy him like that? In a moment of thought, he suddenly remembered something that he had never noticed before. The last time when fighting directly, his eyes made him feel very familiar. After connecting everything, Largo suddenly remembered that he was Ezio. Ezio was the son of a person who was once his father's subordinate. Between them, there was a grudge. That day, the two father and son Ezio came to Largo's private house to meet his father, but in the moment the two sides argued, a bodyguard accidentally shot his father Ezio. He fell down with his last breath right before his son's eyes. From that moment, Ezio had been holding a grudge for many years. He vowed to take revenge at all costs. He kidnapped Largo's son not only to torture him, but he also wanted him to experience the pain of loss like him in the past. Ezio wanted to destroy Largo from money, fame to the only relative. When he knew the purpose of the assassin, he continued to go to Chao Chun's company, with the hope that from this guy can find clues to find his son. Not long after they arrived at Chao Chun's company. To access this place, they mingled with the flow of workers. Largo and Bonnie went everywhere trying to ask about his son, but almost no one knew anything about the boy. They only witnessed the scene of the workers here being brutally exploited. Bonnie took the opportunity to record all the images she planned after leaving here to spread the news to expose their faces. Just then, a little girl, because exhausted, could not work, was beaten brutally by the guards. Largo could not sit still and rushed to knock down the soldier with a punch. Then he quickly carried the girl into a tent to rest. At this time, Riva had secretly approached the control area. She quietly installed into the electrical system a tiny camera capable of monitoring the entire company. But when she just finished the work, a gun suddenly poked behind her back. Unexpectedly, the person standing behind was the assassin Ezio. The two looked at each other with a meaningful smile. It turned out that just like Bonnie's hunch, Riva was not trustworthy. She was the inside of the assassin. The fact that she provided information about Chao-Chen to Largo was just a trap to lure him here. Although knowing that soon Largo would fall into the door of death, but perhaps because of the time of accompanying him had made Riva waver. She tried to persuade Ezio to spare Largo, because now he has lost everything. But Ezio did not care. With him, everything was not over. Ezio coldly looked at Riva and said that do her work or lose her life right now. Before that threat, Riva had to continue to betray Largo. She returned to the tent to show Largo the video she had taken. In the video, there was a picture of a boy looking from behind, very much like his son. After many days without news, just seeing that image, Largo's heart was like fire, just wanted to immediately rush to save his son. Riva had tried to stop because more than anyone she knew it was a trap, but she could not stop a father willing to do everything to protect his son. Largo, ignoring the danger, went straight into the main gate and raised his hand to surrender, with the hope that they would take him inside to meet Chao-Chen. While he was being taken away, Ezio was ready above. Riva tried to call him, once again begged him to spare Largo's life. But that call was accidentally heard by Bonnie. Too indignant to be betrayed, she grabbed a pot and hit Riva hard in the head. But the blow was not strong enough, so not long Riva was awake. At this time, Largo was taken to meet Chao-Chen. Just seeing Largo, he immediately smiled contemptuously. He showed Largo evidence that his subordinates had been doing illegal business with him for profit. But Largo did not care about that. The only thing he wanted to know was where his son was. He bluntly asked Chao-Chen to tell him where Gnome was being held. In exchange, he would spare his life. Chao-Chen, hearing that, felt even more ridiculous, because around him there were always armed guards. What could he do alone? When he was still complacent, Largo quickly grabbed the gun of a nearby soldier and shot down the other one. Then he used a knife to force him to reveal where his son was being held. Because he was too scared, Chao-Chen had to reveal the location. As soon as he got the information, Largo knocked him unconscious and quickly went to find his son. But the person he saw was not Gnome. That young man only had the back figure like Gnome. When he just turned around, he immediately met Ezio. He held a gun in his hand, making him unable to do anything. Ezio calmly handed out the hard drives, inside containing all the evidence of his illegal activities. These were the things he had prepared. After taking Largo's life, he would release everything to the world, to make everyone believe that because the secret was revealed, he had chosen to commit suicide. But just as he was about to pull the trigger, Riva suddenly rushed in with a bulldozer. Taking advantage of that, Largo immediately rushed forward to fight with Ezio. But standing in front of a person who had been trained properly, he was not an opponent. Again and again he was knocked down by him, although Largo tried to get up, but was continuously hit by powerful punches from him. Until Ezio was about to finish him off again, a guard accidentally saw and opened fire, forcing him to run away. Largo also seized the opportunity to escape. Immediately after, Riva took action to knock out the guard and quickly went to find Bonnie. On this side, Largo had chased after Ezio, who was standing on the high ground. Largo rushed forward to throw a punch, but only hit the first blow. The subsequent attacks were quickly defused by Ezio. The initiative was completely belonged to Ezio. But just as he was about to use the electric shock to attack, Largo quickly tore off his lapel and wrapped it tightly around his hand to prevent the electric current. Then he used all his strength to throw Ezio down and hooked him into the crane. But at this moment, Riva appeared, using Bonnie to threaten. She forced him to release Ezio. Largo was completely stunned when the person he trusted most was the one who stabbed him in the back. At this time, Bonnie suddenly woke up and snatched the gun and pushed Riva down. The two lost their balance, but Riva was more unlucky. Bonnie was lucky enough to cling to the railing and fell into the water below. Both hands were tied tightly, making their lives extremely dangerous. Without hesitation, Largo rushed down to save her. After bringing her ashore, he immediately used the electric shock device that Riva brought. After a while of effort, Bonnie was finally awake. But when he looked up, he found that Ezio had disappeared long ago, returning after a life-and-death crisis, with the important evidence that Bonnie collected in the phone. Largo had proved his innocence. The company also escaped the risk of collapse, and Bonnie got her own office. Her news channel exploded with more than 10 million followers. The future no longer had to worry about anything. Only one thing still made Largo painful, which was until this moment he still did not know whether his son was still alive or dead. In another development, in a temple, Gnome was brought by a monk to meet a man who claimed to be his father. According to the monk, they found Gnome by the river. He had lost his memory and did not remember anything about the past. Today someone claimed to be his father, so the temple decided to hand him over to the family. Only the one who came to receive Gnome was not Largo, but the one who came was Ezio. Gnome, because he did not remember anything, could only obediently follow him. What will happen next? What will Largo do to win back his son? Do not miss the following parts for the answer. The video has also ended here. If you find it interesting, please give me a like and a subscribe to the channel to support me. Thank you very much, and see you again.